Welcome back to Awesome Maps, a series where I want to share some of the coolest maps to have ever existed. Last episode I talked about a giant outdoor map of Scotland carved into stone by a Polish World War II veteran that held the record for the largest carved map in the world, so you should check out that episode if you haven't. Episode 2, however, will go in the opposite direction and feature a digitally made map that you can access online. The map is trying to take on one of the nerdiest and most difficult projects one can do, mapping out how people speak. A professional linguist and Christian missionary by the name of Rick Aschmann had grown up around many accents, as his father was from New York and his mother was from Sydney, Australia, with a Scottish influence. The missionary work his family did growing up further moved Rick around the country as well as parts of Mexico, and eventually Rick would himself specialize in indigenous languages. So it's no wonder that he'd grow up fascinated with the different ways that people speak. In early 2009, Rick Aschmann made his own website where he posted a giant map of the United States-Canada area that attempted to map out the different dialects of North American English. This has its unique difficulties for a number of reasons. While accents of a language are limited to pronunciation of words, dialects go further and include differences in vocabulary, grammar, slang, and so on. These do not typically follow state borders and can be more difficult to map out. The resulting map is therefore one of the most detailed maps I've ever seen. If someone saw this map and thought it was too busy, I would totally understand that. But when you consider the function and goal of this map, it's arguably necessary. Aside from general colors to represent overarching dialects, you have various hatch marks and patterned borderlines that distinguish differences in things like vowel pronunciation, or whether the dialect drops the R at the end of the words in their accent. Many of these differences are hard to spot if you're not actively studying linguistics. Sure, you can distinguish between a Texan accent and a New York City accent generally, but some things are a lot more subtle. One example is whether you pronounce these two words as the same or different. If you do pronounce them differently, it's a subtle change, but something that is very distinct linguistically. Caught versus caught. There's also the example of pin and pen. To cite and back up the way he maps these various differences, Aschmann includes cities on the map that when you click on them, you'll be taken to a table on the website that in turn has links to audio or video demonstrating a local's dialect. Many were even submitted by fans and supporters of the website. Considering there are 967 different linked examples, this is unbelievably thorough. There's even a list of rejected examples, including why they were rejected. After all, Aschmann himself is aware that despite growing up in one area, you could sound completely different thanks to your family's influence. There are also a ton of different nerdy linguistic explanations on the website explaining his process, and if you're a language nerd, you'll certainly enjoy browsing through them. But in my opinion, this map isn't just linguistically nerdy, you can also see some interesting tidbits of history within it. On the map, there is an inset of the New Orleans area, and curiously, there's a spot that has the same dialect as one near New York City. This is known by locals as the yacht accent and is left over from a time when New Orleans and New York City were experiencing similar immigration makeups and patterns. Then of course they were also connected by being major trading ports. You can find a similar bizarre situation where parts of Alaska have the same dialect as northern Minnesota. You can also see how the Midland accent has weirdly spread to San Francisco, El Paso, and even parts of Florida. There's even a marker that shows areas where the senior population has a more southern accent, but the younger population is different, which marks an ongoing shift. Now, this map is obviously not perfect. You could never have a perfect dialect map simply because populations overlap. I've also seen some criticisms that the areas west of the Rocky Mountains seem to be more generalized than areas east of the Rocky Mountains. There is also the unique situation of African American vernacular English, which is difficult to map because of how uniquely scattered it is. The same could be said of various so-called Spanglish dialects as well. It's one thing when a foreign dialect is concentrated in a single area, like indigenous ones on reservations or Quebecois French in Quebec, but some dialects are based on communities more than local areas. Now, a lot of you have probably seen over the years many attempts at mapping out cultural regions of America. No one can ever agree on them. Many of them get rightfully dunked on for being hilariously bad, and it's mostly due to the fact that communities and cultures are made up of so many different factors. If this map is an approximation of English linguistic divides, once you add differences in religion, environment, politics, shared histories, other languages, and so on, you're not going to be able to create an accurate cultural or regional map of the US without heavy generalizing or being very selective on what you think matters more. Like, yeah, South and Midwest work for general vibes and funny memes, but there's really so much more once you get digging. As for Aschmann's map, it's a project that has been updated with time. Some omissions or mistakes have been rectified over the years to improve its overall detail. If you compare the map from 2009 to the map of now, there are noticeable differences. And honestly, that's the best you can ask for in something like this. Unfortunately, the last update to the map was in May of 2018. Rick Aschmann is still around, as according to his missionary newsletter, he's been in Ecuador since 2024, so perhaps he's too busy to continue updating the map. After all, he freely admits on the website that this is just a hobby of his. The longer the map isn't updated, the more likely that there are risks of YouTube videos being removed and therefore adding broken source links, and this is assuming some haven't already disappeared since 2018. If the map is never updated again, it'd be hard to say how long a map would stay accurate as language constantly evolves and migrates. But nevertheless, I do think this is one of the most awesome maps ever made, and I hope it can provide valuable insight to linguists and historians for years to come. I've linked to the map's website in the description, and I highly encourage you to check it out. Aschmann's work deserves to be seen. I'm Emperor Tiger Star, and I'll see you guys next time.